Welcome to Pots, Pans, and Pioneers. Today we're going to be making bread in the West Bend bread maker. To find this recipe, please go to potspansandpioneers.com. Okay, so today we're going to be making bread in the bread maker. I store mine under my cabinet, so let me see if I can get it out. Making sure that the carriage is in. Now, you're going to want to read your bread maker instructions as to in the order that you're going to add all your ingredients to your bread maker. Some do liquids first and some do liquids last. My bread maker instructions say to put the liquids first. So I'm using an active dry yeast. It's not instant. It's just Fleischmann's active dry yeast, and I always, proof my yeast first. So there's a cup and a half of distilled water in here. I use distilled water because distilled water is known as the thirsty water, and it's really absorbs into your foods really well. I like to use it when making body wash and all kinds of things. I use distilled water for a lot of cooking and a lot of home products. So I've got one package of active yeast in here, and it's 110 temperature, and I let it set for like 10 minutes. Now, most of the bread recipes that you're going to find on YouTube, and most of the recipes that you see people do on YouTube for the bread maker, they don't proof their yeast. I do. I want to make sure that the yeast is active, because even though the yeast has an expiration date, yeast can sometimes not activate, and so I want to know that before I start adding all these ingredients. So anyway, this is a cup and a half of water and a package of active dry yeast, and we're going to pour this in the bottom. We're going to have our paddles are in, so we're going to pour this in the bottom, and I don't stir it. I also added 3 tablespoons of honey, and I use a Texas local honey. Wherever you're living, you need to make sure and get local honey. It's very, very important, because most of the honey that's in your grocery store is made in Mexico or a foreign country, and many times it's not even honey. So you really, really need to do your research on your Honeybee brand is notorious for not being real honey. So you really need to do your research on your honey before you purchase it. We get ours from a local beekeeper, and we pay a premium for it, but it's really, really good for you, nutritious. So there's no granulated sugar in this recipe, just local honey, 3 tablespoons. I'm going to add a 1/3 cup of olive oil. And you can use extra virgin olive oil, extra virgin light olive oil. You can use canola oil. You can use vegetable oil. You can even do melted shortening. I've not tried it with butter, but this is just the recipe that I have. And we're going to do 4 cups of organic flour. The brand I'm using today is... This is a Red Mill, and it says on here that it's 4 breads, and it's just an all-purpose flour. I mean, you could use bread flour if you wanted to. If you like your bread really dense, bread flour is really good, to use. I also added a 1/3 cup of gluten. Now, there is a lot of people that are allergic to gluten, but nobody in my family so far has had an allergy to gluten, so I add this because it makes the bread taste like store-bought, and the quality of the bread. So I added a 1/3 cup of that. And then there's 2 teaspoons of salt, and I buried the salt inside the flour because you don't want your salt to hit this yeast in the bottom of this pan too quickly, because salt can kill the yeast off very, very quickly. And I'm just going to spread this throughout the pan. And you're going to know after this starts spinning if you have too much flour or, not enough liquid. I always keep extra flour on hand and a little bit of extra liquid because, it just depends on really the weather outside. I live in North Texas, and so sometimes we get super dry weather like Arizona, and sometimes we get really humid weather like Houston. So every day it kind of changes. I have humidity monitors in the house, so I kind of know the humidity. But I'm going to watch this, and I'm going to set this. There's a setting here for sandwich bread. It's the 6, the number 6 on mine. So I'm going to select 6, and I'm going to leave this lid open because for the first probably 3 minutes or so, I'm going to have it spin, and I'm going to make sure that there's enough liquid or flour in it. If there's not, you're going to need to add either one in order to make sure that the dough, mixes really well. Otherwise, if you just let it go, the sandwich bread, I wouldn't say is a set it and forget it. At least the first 5 minutes you're going to need to watch it, unless the radius of humidity in your area is constant. Then you kind of know. Anyway, so I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to go to the number 6, and I'm going to move the camera so it's easier. Maybe I can get inside the machine so you can see. There we go. Okay, so we set it to the number 6 on the menu bar, and I'm going to go ahead and press start. Now it may fly up a little bit, but it's all right. But you're going to be able to see that both of those paddles are moving. And I'm going to get a little bit of water and a little bit of flour just in case. And you see how it's kind of mealy in here? It's almost dry. So I'm going to add, remember I added 1.5 cups of water, so we're just going to drizzle a little bit on here. I'm not going to put too much at a time because you can't take it back. You can always add water, you just can't take any of it back. And what it's doing is it's just doing its first, knead phase. And I'm just letting the water, really get incorporated in there before I see if it kind of needs more. You don't want to add too much because it's going to get, real sticky. I'm going to add a little bit more, and I'm just drizzling. I'm not pouring it in there. This machine is really easy to keep clean. I'm not real worried about, how it's gonna get all messy because it's really easy to clean. You can wipe it out on the inside, and then everything else is kind of dishwasher safe. And it's just going to keep mixing around. And I won't film the entire process of the first knead because it's going to take a while. It needs it for like 10 minutes. But what you're wanting is to test it. If it comes back on your finger and there's nothing there, it has the appropriate amount of flour and water. If you touch this and you've got dough on the end of your finger, you're going to really want to, make sure that you're going to have enough flour. In fact, if it's sticky on your hand, you're going to probably want to, sprinkle a little bit of flour in here. Okay, I'm going to turn off the camera and we're going to wait for the first rise, and I'll bring you back and show you how the bread rose up. Okay, let's check on the first rise. in a few minutes it's going to start kneading again. So as you can see, the bread is rising pretty well. And this is just the first rise, and it'll knead it back down and then rise again. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, so our bread is finished. And now we're going to get it out of the pan. You just have to shake it a little. I like to put butter on the top to keep the crust really soft. Okay. Now you could use a bread slicer or an electric knife, but for the purposes of the video, I'm just going to use a serrated knife, a bread knife. And here is the inside of the bread. It's soft. You can see it's real spongy, but it smells yummy. So I hope you find this recipe helpful. You can find the recipe at potspansandpioneers.com, and there's no spam, or we don't try to collect your email address. You can click the recipe right there on our website. Everybody have a great day.